Grammy, it's okay. Just be a voice in the sky. It's not like you put the best feed through anyways. That's and of course, we sit around and we wait for 2 hours on the magical bit. And I find out I'm going to die, and everything's working perfectly, and now everything falls apart. Perfect timing. So okay. For those of you who wonder what's up with the title, since we live in an ultra PC era, I have to explain. The title is I'm Going to Die. I'm not sick. I'm not threatening suicide or anything like that. That's not the deal here, folks. The deal is, while we were waiting around, I started reading comments, and somebody posted, the modern equivalent of chain letter. And basically it says, if I don't forward this within the next blah blah minutes, which have since passed, I'm going to die in 2 days. So apparently I'm a dead man. It was nice, but it was a good run.
I'm reading obituaries, man.
I know. It's like, you ever write a good obituary, right? Like something like he's... okay. You know what? And we can one-up that absurdity. The first story in the what the fuckedness. I don't know how many of y'all have been following the whole Google +1 thing, which supposedly that experiment's coming to an end at the end of this month or next month or something like that. But a bunch of people just enacted privacy settings for +1, and one of the most notable one is Zuckerberg. Zuckerberg has a +1 account, but apparently he feels it needs to be private. And it shouldn't be public domain, and people shouldn't know about Mark Zuckerberg.
I know how we feel.
And I'm like, am I the only one who finds this just a skosh ironical? It's like, Mark Zuckerberg feels he should have privacy on the internet. Really?
Privacy doesn't exist.
Are you sure? Are you sure, Zuckerpope? Of all the people who has the least right to make that request, it's like, unless we have something else. Where do we want to move on to? Where do we want to start? Pick something, any of you. I don't care.
Well, I can't see the list, but...
Oh yeah, you lost your video. You don't have like another computer you can log into or something?
No, actually I do. Hold on, I have a laptop on the other end.
So, while Kami tries to pull up an auxiliary list view, what about you, Marcel?
I like the last shuttle's not even on the ground, and DC has already trained on the future space program.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just, literally, the thing's still in orbit, and they've already cut the funding for
Hey, my son and I, most people who follow me knows my son is very much a space buff. He has his own YouTube channel where he did a tour of the MBO and all this other stuff. And we got invited to the Johnson Space Center to watch Atlantis take off from inside their auditorium. And it was packed. I mean, they had all these NASA families over there. I think it was, I don't know, maybe from the auditorium can only hold, I think, I'm not sure on the number, but I think about 1,000 people. And then it was so full that other family members had to go to the back of the auditorium, or they went to the respective buildings in some of their lobbies. That like Building 1 has just been renovated, and there's like a nice lobby in Building 1 over there at JSC. So they were watching it, and JSC has some, I guess, so to speak, resentment towards some of this current administration's dealings. And I know there's internal politics in NASA, and that demand part of things, because JSC here in Houston has always pretty much been a power within NASA and deciding, I guess, on policies, and that's kind of changed now since there's really no manned program at all. And Russia now has a monopoly on manned spaceflight. Mm-hmm. But there's a bit of just bad sentiment, bad taste in the mouth right now.
And the other thing is
confusion. And you could see some of that from a lot of the NASA employees that were there. A lot of the contractors have already lost their jobs.
Oh yeah, this is
but
massive.
I always remind people, that the late '70s was also a dark period within NASA, switching from the Apollo program even to a space shuttle program that was kind of there but not. And it wasn't really until the 1980s that a lot of the going back and forth was finally panned out.
And Challenger blew up.
Well, no, and everybody did not get their jobs back. They were like different skill sets.
No, of course.
Yeah, of course. The other thing is that further complicates this one go around is the sales pitch. And at the end of the day, this is politics at its finest. The sales pitch is that this is a big waste of money. Why are we spending money on this? Kill it. And that's why this telescope program got killed. Their logic is, why should we pay for it? Hubble's fine, even though we said nobody can go to it, and they can't service it because it's in a different orbit. And by the way, we don't have a manned space program to sit up there and maintain it, even if it wasn't outside the safety bubble that we decided was unacceptable to ever go to. We pretty much put the death sentence on Hubble when the last shuttle blew up. But now the replacement program isn't going to be enacted. If we go through this logic to its natural conclusion with tightening our belts, which is what we're trying to figure out how to cut red tape out, in the middle of a transition period like this, of going from one program to another, do you think we'll have a space program come 2020, or do you think they'll have to start...
Yes. I don't think this administration is going to last, and I do think that we'll get another president, an administration that changes its vision. I mean, after all, I could give you the link to the video of the current NASA head basically describing this president's vision for NASA. I know this is supposed to be a technical thing, but
this is technical stuff.
Space is such a passion of mine, and so is politics. I mean, it's one of my college degrees along with economics. So it's just I don't find any of the reasoning and logic within the current administration's plan for the space program. And I know there's a lot of defenders out there that try to counter-argue, but I don't know if I should. I guess I'll just give you the video link.
Put it in, and I'll put it in for people to click on.
Yeah, so you can.
I'll put it in the notes. One of the things I am very glad that happened with the space shuttles is that they're already earmarked for going to various museums and other things, so that they can't salvage them to make the next run of ships. Because that was
just the culprit. Sorry.
Because that was one of the things being proposed. That they were going to retrofit the Orion program using the leftovers from the shuttle program, and that scared the bejesus out of me because
I would disagree there. The boosters are fine. That's what they're retrofit. Constellation was using modified, and now they actually tested as successful the boosters. I mean, they launched the X1. And that was a great test. They also finished the booster for the personnel capsule, which is I think it's fine. I mean, you're building on technology that we already know works well instead of having to go through more. NASA is all about
building on the technology is one thing. The plan I was seeing was recycling the parts that are already past their shelf life. The reason we've had people die in the space shuttle is because we sent it way beyond its operational specs.
I think we got replaced. I mean, yeah, some of it was getting old, but for instance, a Challenger, NASA already knew. You already had engineers that said, "Don't go. These couplings are frozen." They had bad temperatures the day before. They clearly stated that this stuff hasn't been tested under these conditions. It doesn't look good. Don't launch. The panel at the time said launch Challenger. And sure enough, the coupling rings, because of the frost the night before, were not able to withstand the pressure. It was also a very windy day. And what a lot of people don't understand is Challenger didn't blow up. It disintegrated.
Yeah.
It just the pitch and roll of the shuttle couldn't withstand the force at the speed it was going, it just simply disintegrated and obliterated the material as it was going up. So that was the primary failure, and they got complacent because, let's put it this way, the shuttle program to NASA did go up and launch successfully, launch after launch after launch, versus the Apollo program, which was plagued with, wow, okay, we have problems now from various Apollo missions. We had six successful missions to the moon. Some of them still had, some of them still had their own issues that are whitewashed. But the shuttle just kept going and going and going and going, and it made an apathetic NASA to the whole program. And finally, Challenger was a wake-up call. And as far as the heat shield's concerned, they caught that as well, but engineers themselves, that was just human expertise being defeated by Mother Nature and physics of variables that you cannot...
I got news for you. Physics and Mother Nature will beat human ego every damn time. That's just the reality of... Like, you can hope and ego your way out of it all you want, but, the physics are going to win. I'm sorry.
Well, it's the thing, they just, the foam's not going to puncture. It hit the hardest part of the wing, which is that hard carbon, and it still punched a hole through it. And they, it was just something that I believe was the same. NASA could say, human beings, we have a capacity and that's it. And I don't like how the mass of non-engineers and the backseat drivers that like to criticize when a catastrophe like that happens and say, well, why didn't you know? Well, my answer to them is, well, why aren't you an expert in the field to try to help out and give your 2 cents?
Well, no. I'm with you on the armchair quarterbacking, and it's really funny. At the end of the day, there was this little narrative that went around that's actually pretty true. It's like, at the end of the day, one of the reasons that was modular like that instead of built as a solid piece had to do with the width of 2 horses' asses, in this roundabout way. But because, those parts were moved by land instead of by sea, which means they had to be small enough to fit on rail lines. And
the shuttle tank was brought in by barge, if I'm not mistaken. The big fuel tank, I think, is brought in by ship. But a lot of the other stuff is by train. Yeah,
and which is why it's modular instead of solid pieces.
Yeah.
Apollo
1 had the same thing. Apollo 1 had the same problem.
I know. Well, and NASA wanted a solid piece, but it cost more to have the solid piece because it have to go by barge instead of rail.
Yeah, that's why they do with the consumer laptop instead of going with the unibody like aluminum design. It's more expensive that way. But it lasts long, but more expensive,
Okay, making the space program all about Steve Jobs' vision of a flying saucer.
Like Frank Borman, who's an astronaut back in the Mercury program and all the way up, basically stated it when Apollo 1 had. He's like, look, we did the best we could as engineers, and we just didn't see it coming. It's just something. Sorry we missed it, and we are deeply sorry we missed it. That we didn't think about how oxygen-rich the environment was in the capsule when they did the test, and the pressure with the door, and so on and so forth.
Oh no! It's like if you look at
engineers, and we can't predict every damn thing.
Well, no, it's one of those things in hindsight. People are like, what do you mean you're surprised that oxygen environment combusts? Well, you know what? If you're actually a chemistry student and you look at the ranges for explosion, and the theory was it was a 100% oxygen environment. 100% oxygen environment is not combustible. The problem was there were some other factors that, in hindsight, were obvious, but...
Like carbon dioxide.
Well, and other things, but yeah.
But that's the thing on it. I did provide the link in there, and then we can comment further, because I know all the arguments for people who defend the current administration's vision and the other side. I mean, my son, we're very close friends with a very good friend of ours that works at NASA. experience with people's opinions and how things are going.
Well, no, my real hit here is that the mentality that's getting both political dominance and, in some cases, on John Q. Public, is that the whole idea is a waste of money, and that's a mindset I find very shameful. Because the reality is, I'm sorry, but unless you have a magic crystal ball that tells you every possible outcome of every possible future, you don't have a clue what research could have what implications where. Half of our modern technology has its roots in some form or fashion out of either innovations in World War II or in the modern space program. It's a day-to-day benefit to every single person in this country, and if you consider that a waste of money, I'm sorry. Then but they don't think of it that way. They think of it spending all this money on something. I'm never going to go up in that rocket. I don't give a shit what the universe started. I don't care about the shape of the... It's like, trust me, this has implications to your day-to-day life.
Well, let me make a short statement in what I perceive is happening. The United States is going from living mentality to a survival mentality. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you understand what that means. In that I'm sure you get up, but for audience members that don't understand, is that living life, to live, should we put ourselves in a bubble for absolute all safety and take out all risk as we live? And is that life? Is that living, or is it just merely surviving? And if we're just surviving, then what's the point really of any type of endeavors we undertake?
Well, and I would also argue, when you cut everything back to the point of just surviving, you're already dead. You're a walking corpse because it basically the first what the fuck that comes along, then you're dead. You know, it's because you're planning for a future that you don't know. And I'm sorry, once you're that afraid to even try, you're already dead. It doesn't matter. It's a matter of when, not if, at that point.
Oh, this is an invention that came from outer space that saved lives on Earth. The smoke detector.
What were you saying, Bit?
Oh, so you go ahead and play the video.
Okay. It says right here on the I just googled it. It's like space inventions. Okay, I found the smoke detector, baby food.
Can you play it or no?
I'm playing it.
Hold on.
And I'll cut it in proper.
And the administrator of NASA, Charles Bolden. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thanks so much for allowing me to be here. It's exciting for me to be here.
Well, it's fantastic having you on Talk to Al Jazeera. I know it's very rude to ask this of a guest, but my first question to you is, why are you here in the region?
Oh, I appreciate you asking the question. I'm here in the region. It's sort of the first anniversary of President Barack Obama's visit to Cairo and his speech there when he gave what has now become known as Obama's Cairo Initiative, where he announced that he really wanted this to be a new beginning of the relationship between the United States and the Muslim world. When I became the NASA administrator, or before I became the NASA administrator, he charged me with three things. One was he wanted me to help re-inspire children to want to get into science and math. He wanted me to expand our international relationships. And third, and perhaps foremost, he wanted me to find a way to reach out to the Muslim world and engage much more with dominantly Muslim nations to help them feel good about their historic contribution to science and engineering, science, math, and engineering.
I'm not sure I agree with the last nanosecond of that video.
I just found out now, watching Lou Dobbs on Fox News, that the head of NASA, our space program, has been given a top priority by this administration to, quote, engage with the Muslim world, unquote.
Did you want to play that one too? Did you mean to play the whole playlist?
No, I just put this to interview the Bolden.
Yeah, I'm going to have to go find that last video because, yeah, this is going into a whole thing.
Is it back?
Yeah, well, no, this is part of a playlist that has to do with impeach Obama, and Obama is the anti-son, and fuck the son and son and everything. It's like, you know what?
We have that for Clinton. We have that.
You know what? This is evidence of something else.
This is an impeachment group, whether it's Bush, whether it's
it's like that's become the new thing. Damn it! You didn't fix my problems with the magic bullet solution. Impeach your ass. That's become the new American way. It's like, God, it's just...
here's my thing with what Bolden said, because I'm just sticking with the facts. Basically, NASA is charged with re-inspiring children to want to get into science and math. Okay, well, you have a budget that's fine. NASA does outreach. They have. They started the Space Center here in Houston that then went private. It didn't do very well. I actually find that a task more for the Department of Education than for NASA. So that's something that science and math, that's fine. NASA continues to do publications and create a lot of these, those 3D movies and things like that I find them very inspiring. And I also know a lot of kids just could give a crap and would rather pay their consoles. But I still think that's a task for the Department of Education.
Well, no, and honestly, I think trying to inspire a pursuit in math and science with everybody's going to be an astronaut is stupid. And I've always thought that, I agree with you, it's more a job for the education to inspire that math and science is fundamental to having a grasp on, just the day-to-day of how you mess with things, then right. I want to be one of 6 people that get to go up in a rocket. Because the reality is most people will never be an astronaut. And I grew up in that state, want to be an astronaut, want to be a astronaut. And then one day I sat down and took a practical assessment. Let's see, I have bad eyes. I have neurological conditions. I was like, there's no way in hell I'm going to fit that narrow 1% criteria of the best of the best. I may get to be a mission specialist, but I'm never going up on a ship. So at least not through NASA. I realized that. I was real young. I did an objective assessment for a moment.
Now, let me put a caveat on this. I think that, because I'm not much of a government person, and I know all the... I guess for the super liberals, I guess would say, aha, we're going to get Mr. Bitten in contradiction. Well, I'll explain. There is a role for government and there is a role for private enterprise. But what I was getting at is that if we're going to stick in the context of solely government, then this should be the Department of Education. More so outside of government, that is the responsibility of a parent to help guide their own children the best they can into education of many sciences and arts, what have you, and that I think is something that's lost in this society. That at least I have, with my own 2 eyes, observed with many parents that just kind of let their children wander on their own. It's amazing.
Well, there's 2 schools of thought I'm seeing on that today. There's I don't want to be the bad parent, so I'm going to be completely hands-off, and I'm going to be my kid's friend.
But that's their job.
Yeah. I'm going to say, no offense, if your kid is lovey-dovey with you 24/7, you're not doing your job as a parent. There are times where your job as a parent is to say, no, I'm sorry, that's not...
exactly, and the same thing. I made some parents, they always come to me and go, I can't control my children, and sometimes they'll either end up doing some sort of weird therapy where they send their children to some doctor, or they're medicated and they still kind of, I just don't understand. And your son was so well behaved, and they disagree with how I handle, because I'm very much a disciplinarian. And they go, oh no, we find that we have to do incentives for them or positive reinforcement. And my answer to everything about positive reinforcement is that human beings, and especially children, will find an opportunity cost greater than anything you can do within a positive reinforcement.
Well, no, but say that gets into the other extreme I was going to talk about, and that is the other extreme that we get into is people who want their children to think exactly like them. They want them to be carbon clones of them, and if they set a toe out of line, if their children are even the slightest bit different than them, they're not their son, they're not their daughter. They're going to punish them down until they're exactly a carbon copy of them. My personal opinion is, both for the betterment of society, the well-being of the child, and everything else, reality is somewhere in the middle. I'm sorry if your kid has a different philosophical look on life than you. They're your kid. You should love them regardless. That doesn't mean you should let them be a dumbass. It's like there's that fine line between letting them be who they are and not going too frickin' far. But at the same day, it comes down to common sense and parents being parents. I mean, parents don't want to be parents anymore. They want that to be somebody else's job. You know?
Exactly. Yeah. Well, let's go to the second one. Now, this is all we just said is all a quote from Bolden saying, and this is Bolden saying this is what Obama told him. So this is not invented words. So we just covered one. He wanted me to help re-inspire children to want to get into science and math. Second, he wanted me to expand our international relationships. So since when is NASA the Department of State?
Since we got involved with I agree with you, they shouldn't be, but we tried to turn NASA into that with projects like the International Space Station and so on, which incidentally we pulled out of.
International Space Station is a different thing, and offloading burden of cost, because going to space is obviously very expensive, and having others contribute instead of holding the entire burden. I don't have a problem with that. But this is international relationships, which will lead into the third, which it says, and third, and perhaps foremost. These are Bolton's words. And third, and perhaps foremost, he, Obama, wanted me to find a way to reach out to the Muslim world and engage much more with this dominantality Muslim nations, these dominant Muslim nations, to help them feel good about their historic contribution to science and math and engineering. So now NASA is the Department of Education, the Department of State, and a rehab counselor.
I wonder why they failed at their duties.
I mean, does this make sense?
No.
We're supposed to, reach out to the Muslim world.
Well, okay, not to shed my
words.
I know, not to shed my politics on this or anything, but keep in mind who's the Secretary of State right now. You know,
NASA. So let's get into, because this is what's going to get into. All right, I love SpaceX, and I like what Virgin Atlantic is doing. They're going to make a tourist business. Fine. SpaceX is more of the company that's going to, that already has, like they have the Dragon capsule. They've got their, I forget the other rocket. What is their heavy lift rockets? And I forget F something or other. And they're making money. They say they've got 40 something, or I may be wrong, but 40 something schedules to make money off of putting satellites in orbit. That's great.
The only time we're going to get an exploratory private, like I like the idea of privatized space.
No, let me finish my thought. I got to finish my thought, because people are going to say, well, because I'm very much anti-government in a lot of things. I don't think that, because I get into personal responsibility. I actually find it a waste of money to keep throwing money into an empty hole that never works in programs where you don't teach a person personal responsibility to fend for themselves, and they don't need all of these safety nets. There are situations that I do agree with safety nets. There's like a common denominator, but I think we've lost that. I think now everybody, no matter your level of anything, expects a certain amount of government support. Why do I support a government agency versus other government agencies where I don't support them? Because I will liken this to, and let me finish my entire thought here.
Please finish it.
We have telephone lines, we have electricity grids. The government creates natural monopolies because if we did allow perfect competition economically to create that, it doesn't make sense to have 10 or 12 sets of electrical lines all running in parallel. It doesn't make sense to have 25 different sets of phone lines running in each municipality. It doesn't make sense to do certain things. The reason why the manned space program still needs to continue and be government funded is because it will create individual responsibility. The problem is that politics get involved and that in itself, it gets bogged down in doing that mission. The space shuttle was supposed to make space travel cheap and then hand it off to private enterprise. SpaceX is making it cheaper to put up satellites. That's great. Now, putting up men, they're doing the Dragon capsule. I've seen the Dragon capsule, especially with the launch escape system. I like their launch escape system where it's not a separate tower and all that. I think it's pretty inventive of themselves to do that. It's a very neat concept that I saw. However, that is still a majority of that funding is going to come from government anyway to offload that cost. I don't really have a problem with SpaceX saying, you know, we can handle now the cost and build the capsules and boosters to put U.S. astronauts or European or Russian, whatever, up to the International Space Station. But then, at the same token, NASA, as a government agency, needs to lay natural monopoly for private enterprise. But that's stopping. We've gone a certain degree, and private enterprise to a degree can take over, but not fully. It's not profitable yet. There is no yet incentive for SpaceX other than to get a paycheck from a government agency.
Well, and that was what I was gonna. That was what I was gonna hype on. That, you know, the only way we're gonna have the private sector. The Air Force has also kept the space program going, by the way. Also,
finish yet. I know what you're.
But moving into like what you're talking about, the profit motive. Really, the only way I see the private sector wanting to set something out like this array NASA wants to build, or these long trajectory signs, is if they can also use them for a hopping ground for strip mining the solar system. For example, when we finally run out of petroleum here on planet Earth, something that's going to look very desirable, we know there's a moon in orbit around one of our outer planets that have methane lakes. We're gonna go steal that. We're gonna send things to go get that.
Right. Let's take the mission, what's designed to take us back to the moon and start harvesting a program to eventually start harvesting these resources. Now, that I will admit, politics gets involved with the government, and if it's a government working with a private contractor to get to that mission, the government's still involved because the government is handing the money over. But SpaceX is not going to say, well, gee, let me invest in something that my fixed cost of actually getting to there is some extraordinary number, which now at this point, how can I sell it to investors to even get a return to them and say, yeah, within a 30-year period, maybe you can get a return? It's not going to happen.
Oh.
That's the job of government. The government's first and foremost responsibility is to defend, have a means of defending its identity. That being the military. Because to me, it's like I know there's these peaceniks that go, no, that's such a waste of money. My thing of it is that if you can't defend the greatness that you've built, in the moment that it gets mowed over by a lawnmower because you don't have the apparatus to defend it, you've mooted the point of its existence. And so the government needs to establish roads where we ourselves as citizens and corporations have our personal responsibility, our individual responsibility to say, okay, fine, the road has been set. I have a road to drive on. Now I'm going to build a gas station here. I'm going to build a building here because people can get here. It's the same thing with space travel. We need to get...
Yeah, it's like we've turned this into the political power hour here. But
right.
it's like, well, no, and this is coming down to a philosophical debate.
I have to defend why I support NASA.
Well, no, I know, but at the end of the day, this is
programs that don't produce results, that don't create individual responsibility, but create dependency.
Well, no, but see, that's the thing that's in a nutshell, and that's the philosophical debate going on in the States right now. Is it the responsibility of government to provide the means and then
opportunity.
Is it to create the ability for opportunity, but then leave it up to you whether or not you take advantage of it, or to fix the deck and rig the deck so every time you pull the slot machine lever, you get a payout? Which one is? One sounds better. My personal opinion is it has way too high a price tag, but.
But see, that's it. The government's job is to create equal opportunity, not equal results.
Yeah.
Or equal outcome.
Oh, well, we're all socialists and communists, right? And on that note, before we stick
our change topics now that we've bored everybody to tears. hearing on this.
Yeah. Okay. Join us in part 2, where we do resume tech in this tech show.